Hi everyone, welcome back to another edition of my videos, and I guess this is kind of a little finale, or a mini finale if I do say so myself, as this was from my final game of Season 22 of the Lichess 45 Minute League. A really fun season. I've really enjoyed this year, and well, I would like to start this video by just saying thank you to all those moderators on the 45 Minute League. It's been incredibly well run, and I'd highly recommend anyone who is watching this video to certainly join up this league. You can find it on lichess.org. There's things posted about it at I think the end of July in regards to the new season. I think they are going to be starting again in a couple of weeks' time. This is obviously to give a little bit of break to the moderators who've been working extra hard to ensure that we have had excellent games this season during the COVID crisis. And well, this was my final game. It was an absolute corker of a game. So exciting. Lots of things happened in this game. And one of the things I would say that was really cool about this was this game was shared on a sort of Watch Lichess group. We actually in the end had about up to 12 people watching this game at once, which is really quite nice. I've never, even in sort of real life on the board chess, I've never had 12 people surround my board looking at one of my games. So certainly there must have been something in this position that made it so interesting. I was playing as black, and my opponent started with e4. e5, knight to f3 attacking the pawn and developing, knight to c6 developing and defending, bishop c4. We enter into the Italian game. So getting the pieces to nice squares in the centre, and actually at some point there is now a threat of this move. I now play knight to f6. This now tempts the knight to come here. And well, white does this. He comes to this square now. d5 was played. This is pretty much the only move to stop this threat. And after e takes d5, we have knight to a5, hitting the bishop. Now, this is the mainline position from here. But even though it's the main line, black will go down a pawn. So after bishop b5 check, c6, black has to give up a pawn here. But he's going to get some incredibly fast and active play as a result. Now, there are three main responses from here. He can play bishop to d3, bishop to e2, and also queen to f3. Queen to f3 is quite an interesting move, and it was a move I was expecting him to play, as he has in fact played it in a number of his games. Now, you may know that I actually have a video that covers this line where I actually explored this c takes b5 idea. Really interesting, allowing him to capture the rook and win in exchange, but I get actually a very fast dynamic play as a result. I would highly recommend check out the video if you do want to learn a bit more about this sort of gambit. But otherwise in this game he didn't play that. He decided to come back to d3, still one of the main lines. So now there is a very odd move order for me to continue with. Essentially, I've got to start making a route with this knight coming to d5, followed by f4, and then look to exchange this bishop on d3. We can kind of get away with playing all these moving of the pieces a couple times in the opening, as well, white's bishop is still a little bit misplaced on d3, blocking in this this d pawn. So let's see how it continued. So knight to d5, the knight came back to f3, so now hitting this this pawn. So I now defend it with bishop to d6 developing and also getting ready to castle, and castles as well. And the main line continues knight to f4, which is what I did, so now threatening to double up this pawn here. And in actual fact, white has to pretty much oblige to this. He has to take on the fact that his pawns are going to get doubled up. It's going to be a little bit difficult for him to develop, but he's still up a pawn at the end of the day. So I guess there's always that justification for white. Though he gets this dodgy looking structure, dodgy development, he is still up a pawn. So objectively speaking, he is probably slightly better. But here there was a very odd move was played. I think my opponent was very worried about this this doubling up of the pawns on the d file. So he played a move that was certainly not the best continuation. That was bishop to e2. It's not totally losing yet, but it's certainly an inaccuracy. And the reason why it's an inaccuracy is because essentially white has spent 2 moves now moving the bishop to e2. So it's almost as if he is playing the bishop e2 line, but having to spend 2 moves to do it. So essentially he is down 1 tempo. I'll show you what I mean. If I go back a sec, just so you can kind of see that here white can just go straight to e2. And if I went the same way, let's say the knight came here and then this knight came here, this position would be totally the same. In fact, white would be winning as he's now got a move in hand. But we reach the position after this where the bishops come back here and it's actually me to move. And well, there was a very interesting variation that I could have played here. So in the actual game I went pawn to e4. I decided to hit this knight that was on this very good square on f3, and well, it was very difficult for white to where to put this knight. Another move I could have considered, and I did think about it at the time, but I just decided in the end it probably was looking a bit unsafe, is would you be kind of very surprised to see is knight takes on g2. What a powerful move. So getting back the pawn, but also inflicting some very, very dangerous damage to the white king. Now, if the white king were to recapture here, this would in fact be very bad for white. After e4, this knight needs to move somewhere. So let's say it comes back to, well, let's just say it goes to d4 as a first example. Now the queen can come rushing in on g5, and this is a very difficult threat to parry. You'll notice that all these squares are covered by our pieces. If the king came back to h8, h1, which is 1 move, this would in fact be a very quick checkmate. Queen to f4, checkmate is inevitable. There's no way of stopping it. If knight came back here, capture, giving up, and there's still no way of stopping this mate. After maybe something like this, captures, there is checkmate. So you can already see the potential of these pieces flooding into the position very quickly. So that would have been a very interesting continuation to go into. I'll just show you one other line that could have happened if instead the knight came here. This is in fact still losing after, well, yeah, this is the same continuation. The knight can't get in the way in time to block this queen f4 idea, so that would in fact still be losing. Okay, so going back then, so in the actual game, I didn't play that. I think it would have been, that would have been a very difficult line to calculate, and it certainly, to me, it looked very, very risky. But instead I played e4, which I think is just as good. I think this is quite a good move too, as there's a lot of problems for white in how he continues here. He's only got 2 good squares he can go to. Obviously all these other squares are covered by our pieces, so that just leaves this d4 square and this knight to e1 square. And in my mind I thought to myself, he's probably going to play knight to d4 here, and well, would you believe it, this is a totally losing move, as now I can play the really strong reply queen to h4, which is what I was looking at in my games. If g3 is played, queen to h3, We're not worried about this pawn captures here. It looks very good, but this is now mate and free. There's no way of stopping this this queen and this bishop coming onto this h2 square. So if I move like this, trying to stop it, there's no way of stopping the mate here. So if he played anything else, let's say bishop came to f3, he'd in fact just give up the bishop now. And again, he can't capture here because, well, this bishop recaptures and the mate threat is still there. There is actually, I think there's still an interesting continuation with rook to e1, just sort of prolonging the pain for a bit longer, but it's still no good here. He can come back here, but he is just simply down a piece, and after bishop to g4, he's going to lose another piece very, very quickly. Rook to here. In fact, he could probably just take off the rook and be up in exchange as well. So not an ideal position at all. So going back, so you really can't do. So you can't do that either. There's really not a whole lot black can do here. He has to somehow parry this mate in some way, but lose a piece in the process. So again, I was expecting that and I would have been very happy. Instead, he played the move knight to e1. This is the only move he can play, and boy does it look like a weird move. I just can't see how someone could find this move. It looks horrible. This knight is now stuck on the back rank, but annoyingly it defends the g2 square. So it's not quite sort of lights out just yet in this position. White barely holds on, and you know, I looked at this position, I thought, God, this must be winning for black here. Surely I can start throwing in all my pieces to defeat my opponent. Well, here I now play knight to h3 with a check. The point being, if this capture occurred, this queen to g5 idea comes in once again. He would have to give up some material just to survive the attack. So if bishop to g4, queen to f4, knight to f3 would be the only way to stopping this mating threat, after which we can actually continue this way. If let's say this happens, then we can capture this. This is totally winning. So another way he could play is d3 to stop that, in which case we can capture this, go up a whole piece here. If e takes, queen to h3, now threatening mate again. Only way to stop it would be f4, after which e takes f4. There's a complicated variation here, but you can at the very least see that black is going to end up a little bit ahead. The only move he can play here is rook to f2. If he captures this rook, now queen takes on h2, king to f1, and then a nice continuation here would be to castle long, getting ready to block the escape route for the king. White should be totally losing in this position. So that wasn't played in the game, but it was certainly an interesting continuation to go into. So I don't think black particularly liked the prospects of all those attacking moves that I had, so instead played king to h1. And here again I thought to myself, this looks like a really tempting move now, and I decided to capture here on f2 with check again. So there's not really any good responses here. He has to really take this, otherwise he loses his queen. So he captured my knights, queen to h4, and now threatening checkmate in 1. g3, the only move in this position. Bishop takes g3, rook to g2. Just about holding in here. The rook needs to stay on this square in order to defend against this simple mate in 1. And as I say, guys, I looked at this position and I thought to myself, I must be winning here. White is totally blustered. All his pieces are still stuck on the back rank. I should have a nice advantage. After I captured here on e1, I'm now ahead a pawn in the position. But in actual fact, you would be shocked to see that in fact it is white who is still winning here. He somehow has some great defensive moves to keep him in the game. So in the actual game it continued d3. This is a really good key move, getting the bishop off, and now he's got quite a tricky threat here with this bishop coming to g5, threatening this queen, in fact being very close to trapping it. I continued bishop to h3, now hitting this rook. The rook came back to g1, and well, here I made a big mistake. What I should have done in this position is play maybe bishop to b4 and get it out of the position. I think I would have been absolutely fine. I would no longer have any more hanging pieces, and white's king is still very exposed here. I could look at maybe ideas of castling at some point and then maybe start pushing this f-pawn to attack in the position. In the actual game I made a big mistake. Bishop to f2. This is a blunder. I wonder if you can see the best move that white could play here that saves his position. And you know, it sort of goes along the same idea that I just showed you in that last line of what happens with this queen. So the move that won him the game was bishop to g5. Ah, oh, what a strong move. Now my queen is totally trapped here. There is no hope for it. It's got no squares along here, no squares down here. You can't go here. So in actual fact it is now lost. There's not really too much more to say about this game. Very frustrating that I blundered the queen, but white defended so well to be able to survive this position, because I just thought my attack was totally winning. In actual fact, even at this position here, it is in fact white, according to the engines, that is 0.9 ahead, despite being down a pawn and having a king in a horrible looking position. Quite stunning, if I do say so myself, that that this is not considered a winning continuation. Quite amazing. So I'll show you kind of what happened afterwards. I captured the rook here, trying to create some counterplay. Bishop took here. I played my bishop back to d4. I still had some little tricks I was trying to go for, maybe with ideas of bishop coming here. And if this ever captured, I can maybe capture here, almost delivering mate. Of course, the bishop would be there. But I just tried to play for some complications. One other idea was that this threatens to take this pawn on b2. But I think actually white is still doing fine. He's still up at a queen here. Knight came to c6, g5. I tried to come up with some complications. Bishop g3, f4, f5. There was a capture. I castled long. It's weird that I could still castle in this position. Queen came to e1. f4 was played. I again tried to keep attacking. Bishop kept to f2. White manages to defend this position quite easily. There was a couple captures. With each capture, I'm slowly getting worse in the position. I'll just show you kind of towards the end here. I tried to come up with one last complication, capturing here and pushing, but it's all over. This is a really nice check as it now forks the king, but also the knight on a5. After I moved my king to b7, captured an a5, I in fact resigned here. I've just got no more pieces left to do deal any damage to white. But again, just such an interesting position here. You know, if I was to show this to any chess player, they would probably say that black is better in this position. But it is in fact white who is the one who is winning here, which I just find utterly amazing, considering you know what the position of this king, how well all the activity of my pieces. It just looks like I should be winning. But in any case, guys, thank you for watching, and thank you again to the Lichess 45 Minute League for producing another great series on of the Lichess League. Hopefully I'll try and compete in the next edition. Hopefully my work schedule won't be too busy when we return to work very soon. Thank you very much, guys, for watching, and I'll see you soon. Take care.